If people are listening out there that haven't done open source before and they want to get involved with it after they hear the kinds of cool things that you're working on, in particular, they want to get involved with the Hugging Face Transformers library or some other library, the PyTorch library. How do you recommend they get started?
Yeah, that's a really great question, a common one that I often get. I would say there's a few different ways you can contribute. It depends a bit on like your background. So if you're already like a very proficient, say, PyTorch developer, then reading the Transformers code, source code, is relatively straightforward. So you can immediately, for example, pick up open issues on GitHub or look for open bugs that haven't been tackled yet and work on those. But for people who are a bit more like myself, so I started off being a non-coder. I was quite a late bloomer. I think I was like 28, 29 when I started learning how to code.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like
Oh,
very,
wow.
very late. And for me, the thing was like I was looking at this stuff and I'm like, I have no idea like how to contribute. And actually starting off with like just trying to read the documentation and improve the docs was often the sort of gateway drug to then actually writing code. Because often when you're trying to understand something, you realize, oh, there's a gap in the way it's explained. So I would say those are like the sort of two main routes. One is like go through the docs, which is more like kind of high level, and the other one is to sort of just pick up issues that are on GitHub. But the kind of open source landscape for machine learning is also more diverse than just code, right? So some of the sort of like most impactful things that we've seen on the Hugging Face Hub have been from community members who, for example, created a translation of a popular data set, or they curated like their own data set, which turned out to be very useful. So an example of this, right, is the alpaca data set, which was the kind of the data set that sort of launched this whole revolution in like llama instruction models. It was like 3 grad students at Stanford who basically used, ChatGPT or I think it was ChatGPT to generate a data set of instructions, and they trained a model on that. And it was like $300, and I think probably a few days' work. So it's kind of like there are different ways you can contribute. And the other one that maybe is worth mentioning is we often have at Hugging Face a lot of events. So we have hackathons where people, for example, can get access to things like Google TPUs and train, very cool projects. And so if you want to be part of like the community itself, that's another way of, getting your hands dirty and seeing, excitement.
Very cool. Great tips for getting started in open source, reading and improving the docs, picking up GitHub issues, and things like dataset curation.
Yep.
Very cool. All right, Lewis. So I actually had a ton more questions that I could have gone over with you, but I also want to get to some of the audience questions that we had. So when I
Sure.
posted a week before recording that I was going to have you on the show, the post got an extreme amount of engagement. So at the time of recording, over 36,000 impressions, almost 400 reactions, 23 comments, 13 reposts. It's crazy. And some of these questions are really cool. All right, so the first question that I'm going to go over is from Sangeetha. So she's an NLP engineer, and she is interested in hearing about your views on the notion of synthesizing a data set using an enterprise model and then fine-tuning it on an open source LLM. So you and I, Lewis, we did talk about this earlier, but she mentions that your recent blog post on LLM evaluation was amazing. I wasn't aware about that. I'm going to have to try to make sure to include it in the show notes. And yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add for Sangeetha on this concept, which yeah we talked about a bit earlier, but you might have more to add for her.
Yeah. So the basic process here is like getting a very good instruction data set is quite a costly endeavor, because if you use humans, you need to get people to sit down and come up with creative ideas of like, give me a recipe for pasta, and then actually give the recipe, right? So you have this kind of very arduous task, and you can pay companies to do that, but it will cost you quite a lot of money. So the shortcut today that most people take is they say, well, let's just try to derive this from GPT-4 or from ChatGPT. But as you mentioned earlier, OpenAI have this kind of thing in the terms of service which say, you can't use these outputs from our models to, train competitors to, our stuff. So even though I think, and I'm not a lawyer, so of course don't take this advice, I'm not sure how enforceable terms of service are really. Like, I mean, who knows? That has to be tested, I think, in court. But of course, if you're a company, you don't want to go near that. I think that's too high risk to take today. So the alternative I would suggest is to maybe see if some of the newer models, like Falcon or Llama 65B, can get you maybe half the way there. So I've lately been prompting StarCoder, which is a kind of code generative model. And it's quite okay at generating some of this synthetic data for coding applications. So I think it's probably only maybe a few months away before we're able to do something analogous to like the sort of ChatGPT generation using a permissive model, and then those issues will no longer be with us.